I don't think that hell is what is depicted in medieval paintings of torture racks and pincers and red-hot irons and things of that sort. It seems to me that the essence of hell is what Paul describes in 1 Thessalonians 1:5, where he says, they shall suffer the punishment of exclusion from the presence of the Lord and from the glory of his might. And I think that is the anguish of hell. It is separation from God, from all that is good and beautiful and lovely, to be left with one's own crabbed and selfish heart forever. And I think that is the essence of what hell is. Now, is this compatible with the goodness of God? I would say that far from being incompatible with the goodness of God requires the existence of hell. I think hell is a manifestation of the goodness of God. Why do I say that? Well, because it shows that God is just. If God simply blinked at sin, he would not be perfectly just. And yet God is absolute justice. Every sin, every wrongdoing in the universe will receive its just desert. And so hell is a manifestation of the perfect justice of God. And when you think about that, it is just as difficult a question as how could a loving God send people to hell, to ask, how could an all-just God send people to heaven? As a purely intellectual question, that is every bit as difficult. How could a God who is perfect justice send anybody to heaven? And yet people never worry about that, do they? They never ask about that question. But it seems to me that there's a real dilemma here in the nature of God. His absolute goodness, and not goodness, his love and compassion demand reconciliation and forgiveness. And so we ask, how could a loving God send people to hell? But his perfect justice demands punishment for sin rightly deserved. And so we say, how could an all-holy God permit people to go to heaven? And I think the answer is Jesus. At the cross of Christ, the justice and the love of God meet. They meet at the cross. At the cross, we see God's justice as his wrath is poured out upon sin, and Christ bears the penalty for sin that we deserve. But at the cross, we also see the love of God as God himself takes on human flesh and bears the death penalty for sin that his own justice had exacted, so that we should never have to be punished and can go free. So at the cross, we see the unfathomable love of God for us in what Christ suffered and endured for us. And yet we see the perfect holiness and justice of God as the terrible punishment for sin is poured out.